Have you ever looked down at your own hands and noticed something you can't quite describe? Maybe they're a little thinner, the skin more delicate, or maybe it's the way you move now, slower, gentler, as if your body knows it's carrying something more fragile than before. It's not fear you feel. It's not even sadness. It's just something different, a quiet awareness, a softness around the edges of life. If you're over 70, perhaps you've started to feel this too. The subtle way your body speaks to you these days, not in pain, not in sickness, but in whispers. You get up from a chair and pause for just a second longer. You forget why you walked into a room, but you remember how someone made you feel 40 years ago. Your appetite changes. The mornings feel longer. And silence? It's no longer empty, it's comforting. These aren't random quirks of aging. Sometimes these small changes are the body's way of preparing. Not because something is wrong, but because life, in its wisdom, begins to shift gently towards stillness. Not every change is a warning, but some are messages worth listening to. In all my years of listening to older adults, not just their medical histories, but their stories, their worries, their hopes, I've come to recognize certain changes that often come in the final stretch of life. Not sudden, not dramatic, but consistent, familiar. Patterns that tell me, as a doctor and as a human being, that time is asking to be held a little more tenderly now. And that's what I want to share with you in this video. Not to scare you, not to suggest anything is wrong, but to offer you a gentle awareness so that if these changes appear, you won't feel confused or alone. You'll understand what they might mean. You'll know how to respond, not with panic, but with peace. These signs don't always come in order. They don't come for everyone. But when they do, they deserve your attention. They are not the body giving up. They are the body gently letting go. In a moment, we'll begin with one of the first changes I often see in my patients. It starts small, so small that most people ignore it. But those who notice, those who listen closely, often find comfort in knowing that the body is simply doing what it knows how to do. Prepare in the most loving way it can. And if this message speaks to you in any way, if you've noticed these shifts in yourself or someone you care for, I invite you to stay with me. Leave a comment if you've ever felt these changes, or if you simply want to be heard. Click like if this video resonates, and subscribe if you'd like to continue walking this journey with me. You are not alone. Let's begin, gently, together. It often begins with the legs. Not in a dramatic fall or a sudden collapse, but in something far more subtle, a sense of hesitation. You stand up from your chair and feel the weight of your own body in a way you didn't before. The muscles don't respond as quickly. You reach for the table, not because you have to, but because it makes you feel steadier. And then slowly, you begin to notice the little things. The stairs seem longer. The hallway feels wider. That short walk to the kitchen takes just a few more breaths. This change doesn't come overnight. It's like a slow, quiet fading. The strength you once trusted to carry you without thought begins to feel uncertain. Your legs, once sturdy and dependable, now need a second or two to agree with what your mind is telling them. And for many people over 70, this is one of the earliest physical signs that the body is shifting into a different mode. It's not weakness, it's not failure, it's transition. The body, as it moves closer to its natural conclusion, starts to conserve energy. The systems that used to be on standby are now more selective. The legs, the very foundation of our movement, are often where we feel it first, and not just in strength, but in confidence. You may find yourself moving more carefully, thinking twice before stepping up or down. That isn't fear, that's wisdom. And yet this subtle shift can stir something deeper. The awareness that your body no longer moves the way it once did can bring unexpected emotions. Frustration, vulnerability, even grief. But it can also bring something beautiful. Presence. When every step becomes intentional, when every movement asks for attention, you begin to experience your body not as something to push through life with, but as something to accompany you gently through it. I remember an older gentleman, quiet, thoughtful, the kind who always stood tall. One day during a checkup, I asked how he'd been walking lately. He paused, then smiled softly and said, "I still walk, just slower. I've started noticing the birds more." There was no sadness in his voice, just a shift, a new rhythm, a quieter pace. That's the invitation within this change. Not to rush, not to mourn, but to adapt. To move through the world a little slower perhaps, but with greater awareness. To trade speed for presence, to see more, feel more, and resist less. If your legs have started to feel heavier, or if you're taking more breaks than you used to, honor that. Sit when you need to sit, stand when you're ready, rest when your body asks. This is not about pushing yourself to keep up with your past. This is about walking in step with who you are now. And if you're noticing this in someone you love, offer your hand, not out of pity, but out of respect. Walk beside them, not ahead. Let their new rhythm become your shared one. There's tenderness in that. There's love. In just a moment, we'll talk about something else your body may be doing, often unnoticed. A signal that has less to do with strength and more to do with something far quieter, how your senses begin to shift, and how sometimes it's not the loudest changes that matter most, but the ones you barely notice until they've already made their way into your everyday life. Let's listen for those together. It can come on so gradually that you barely notice it at first. The food you used to crave feels a little bland. The music you once loved seems softer somehow. The scent of morning coffee doesn't reach you the way it used to. And when someone speaks from across the room, you may nod and smile, not because you heard them clearly, but because you didn't want to interrupt the moment with a what? These quiet shifts in your senses, taste, smell, hearing, aren't always obvious. They don't cause pain, they don't raise alarms. But for many people over 70, they begin to change the way life feels. Not in a way that's frightening, but in a way that reminds us how much we experience the world through the details we often take for granted. One of the most subtle and meaningful body changes that can occur as life begins to slow is this gentle dulling of the senses. The body, always conserving, always adjusting, begins to turn its focus inward. And as it does, some of the ways we connect to the outside world grow quieter. I remember a woman in her late 70s who told me, "I still eat my favorite meals, but I mostly enjoy the memories that come with them now. The taste isn't what it was, but the feeling is still there." That struck me deeply, because even as the senses begin to fade, the emotional resonance of those senses remains. The sound of a grandchild's laughter may not be as crisp, but the joy still lands fully in the heart. The scent of a familiar perfume may come and go, but the comfort it brings stays. This isn't about decline. It's about tuning into a different frequency. It's about learning to listen, not just with your ears, but with your presence. To taste not just with your tongue, but with your memory. To see not just with your eyes, but with your soul. These changes don't mean your experience of life is less rich. They mean your experience is evolving. It becomes less about sharpness and more about softness. Less about speed, more about depth. You begin to notice things that can't be captured with any of the five senses. The warmth of a hand in yours, the peace of sitting in your favorite chair with nothing to do, the power of silence shared with someone who knows you. And for those who love someone going through this shift, know this: your presence matters more than the words you say. If they ask you to repeat something, do it gently. If they sit quietly while you talk, don't assume they're not listening. Sometimes the greatest listening doesn't require words at all. This too is a phase of grace. It invites us to slow down our conversations, to deepen our patience, to meet each other not with volume, but with understanding. And in that space, connection grows stronger, not weaker. Even as the senses fade, the soul becomes more vivid. Very soon we'll talk about a change that isn't about movement or perception. It's about rhythm, a shift in the body's pace, one that can feel unsettling at first, but often carries with it an invitation to align more closely with life's most honest pace. A sign that may not be urgent, but is deeply meaningful if we learn how to hear it. Let's explore that together. It begins with the breath. Not in the way we usually think of it, not as a gasp, not as something strained, but as a quiet, almost imperceptible shift in rhythm. You're sitting in your favorite chair, watching the light shift across the room, and you notice you're breathing a little slower. The rise and fall of your chest takes its time. The space between each inhale and exhale stretches just a little longer. And then maybe, when you walk from one room to another, you need a moment. You pause not because you're winded, but because your body wants you to wait. It's not telling you to stop. It's telling you to move with more care, more presence. That's how the change begins. One of the most overlooked shifts in the final phase of life is this quiet change in energy. It's not about being tired after a long day. It's a different kind of tired. It's as if your body is speaking a new language, one of conservation. It's choosing what to invest in, choosing when to engage, choosing when to rest. And in doing so, it teaches you something sacred, that slowing down is not failure, it's wisdom. I remember a man who used to rise before dawn every morning, walking 2 miles before the neighborhood even stirred. In his late 80s, he told me one day, "I still rise early, I just sit instead. I sit with the morning." He smiled when he said it, not with regret, but with reverence. He had stopped moving to keep up. He had started moving to feel more. This slower rhythm, when we learn to accept it, becomes a kind of grace, a chance to reconnect with what matters. You begin to spend less energy on rushing, proving, pushing, and more energy on being, noticing, savoring. You stop filling the day with tasks. You start filling it with presence. And yet this change can also be emotional. When the body slows down, the mind sometimes struggles to catch up. There may be moments of frustration at what you can no longer do, at the things that now require effort. But there can also be a quiet liberation. You begin to ask different questions. Not what do I need to finish today, but what do I want to feel today? Not what do I have to do, but who do I want to be with? This is where life begins to crystallize into its most essential truths. The time is not measured by speed, but by meaning. That motion is not always the same as momentum. That a life lived slowly can be just as full, sometimes even more so. So if your breath feels slower, if your steps are more deliberate, if your days stretch in gentle waves instead of crashing forward like they once did, trust that. That's your body's way of aligning you with what matters. It's not the end, it's a shift. And in that shift, there's an invitation to stop chasing life and start receiving it. In the next moment we'll share together, I'll talk with you about perhaps the most intimate change of all. One that doesn't show up in movement or appetite or rhythm, but in your sense of self. A deep inner signal that something inside you is preparing, not to disappear, but to release. It's tender, it's quiet, and it deserves to be heard. We'll go there gently, together. There comes a time when something inside begins to loosen, not just in the body, but in the identity. You might look in the mirror and see the same familiar face, lined with time, softened with experience, but there's a new stillness in your eyes, a knowing. You don't feel like you're fading, you feel like you're returning, not to a place, but to something truer, something quieter, something more whole. This shift doesn't come with fanfare. It's not the kind of change others will necessarily see. It lives deep within. It's when the things you once clung to, the roles, the responsibilities, even the names you've carried for decades, start to feel less important. You're still a mother, a father, a neighbor, a friend. But you don't feel the need to hold those identities so tightly anymore. You've played your part, and now something within you is gently stepping back from the stage. It can feel disorienting at first. You might wonder, who am I without all these titles? Without all the doing? But what you'll begin to discover if you let yourself rest in the question is that underneath all the roles you've played, there has always been a steady, quiet you, a presence, a soul, a witness to it all. This is one of the final and most sacred transitions the body and spirit can make. It's not about letting go of life, it's about letting go of the need to control it. You begin to trust more, not because you've given up, but because you've lived enough to know that control was never the goal. Peace was. You've lived 1,000 days filled with trying, fixing, carrying, proving. Now your heart wants something simpler, to be held. And in this space, many people begin to do something extraordinary. They begin to bless. Without even realizing it, they start offering quiet benedictions to the people around them. A smile that says, "You're going to be okay." A pause in conversation that holds more than any words could. a squeeze of the hand that lingers, full of love unspoken. It's not unusual in this stage for people to begin giving small things away, not just belongings but memories, glances, soft words that feel like gifts. And even though those around them may feel a sense of anticipatory sorrow, the person themselves often radiates something else. Peace. A calm, glowing peace that speaks louder than any diagnosis, louder than any uncertainty. You may begin to notice that you no longer need to be right. You no longer need to be busy. You just want to be real. You want truth. You want connection. And you want stillness. The kind that doesn't ask anything of you. The kind that simply lets you be. This isn't the end of your story. This is the most honest chapter. The part where everything unnecessary falls away and all that remains is what matters. Love, memory, presence, forgiveness, grace. If you feel yourself entering this space, let it come. Don't push it away. Let your breath be enough. Let your gaze be soft. Let yourself be surrounded, not by noise, but by warmth. You've earned this gentleness. You've earned this quiet. Soon we'll come to the end of this conversation, and when we do, I want to leave you not with heaviness, but with hope. Because even as life draws inward, even as the body shifts and the soul settles, there is still so much light. And sometimes in the final stretch, that light shines brighter than ever before. Let's walk into that closing together.